Good evening. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, I'd like to welcome my fellow board members. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Want to welcome our special counsel, as well as Attorney Magnan, Mr. Wong, our police staff, and our chief. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen in the audience and those watching at home. Tonight, we have a special meeting, and the only thing on tonight's agenda is a show cause hearing. Mandarin House LLC, doing business as the Kowloon Restaurant, 948 Broadway, Saugus, Mass. 01906, for the purpose of possible suspension, modification, revocation, and/or cancellation of the all-alcoholic common victuals license at said 948 Broadway, Saugus, Mass. 01906. This public hearing is pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 136, under the liquor rules and regulations and entertainment rules and regulations of the town of Saugus, Mass. The Board of Selectmen will solicit testimony through witnesses that have already been identified. Will all witnesses please stand and raise their right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God? Thank you. You can sit down. We are here tonight due to an incident that occurred on Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving, at the Kowloon Restaurant, 948 Broadway in Saugus. During this evening, we're going to listen to detailed explanation of what occurred that night. The Saugus rules and regulations for liquor establishments state that no disorder or unlawful conduct should ever occur. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to fully explore if any rules were violated, and if they were, if any penalty or additional restrictions or changes in operations should be made. All board members will have an opportunity to ask as many questions as they would like to the witnesses and to the attorneys. I would like to mention that it's important that all license holders be treated the same and all be treated fairly. I do hope at the end of this hearing, we'll put measures in place to ensure that this type of incident doesn't happen again. I would like to recognize Mr. Bobby Wong and his attorneys. If you'd like to just quickly stand. Thank you. And I want to introduce our special counsel, Iris Lesnick, who's been our special counsel in Saugus for many years. And special counsel will be representing this board in this hearing. Mr. Special Counsel.
Thank you to the chair and to the members of the board. I did want to emphasize that even though the show cause hearing has quite a name that perhaps is somewhat intimidating, that this is the way that the board, which is the organization that supervises licensing in the town, this is how the board has to conduct business. And it's through the show cause process and procedure that these matters can be identified and brought to the attention of the licensing authority, and the licensing authority has the ability to investigate. There have been reports from the police department which have been shared with council, and I would like to start by asking the chief to go to the podium. Oh, before doing that, I did want to say that the police officers who will testify tonight that the counsel for the licensee has the opportunity and the ability to ask them questions and cross-examine them, so to speak. The hearing is conducted in accordance with administrative rules and regulations, and while evidence is not held to the same strict standards that exist in the court of law, there are evidentiary standards and practices and procedures that are the best practices for hearings of this type. And the ability of the licensee's counsel to ask questions and cross-examine is a necessary part of this hearing. I would also say that the board has the opportunity, the individual board members, as you do at your regular meetings, to ask questions of the witnesses through the chair, and you will have the opportunity to do that. So with that thought in mind, I would like to have the chief go to the podium, and I will ask some questions of the chief. Chief, would you just state your full name for the record?
Sure. Michael John Riccadelli.
And you received a report from your Lieutenant Flynn about what had taken place at Kowloon on the evening of November 23rd?
I did.
Okay. And you shared that report with the Board of Selectmen?
Yes, I did.
Just in terms of things that you might have done after the incident took place, did you meet with officers who were there at the scene that night?
I met with some of them, yes.
Yeah. And did you discuss the events of that night and what took place?
Yes.
And did your inquiries prompt you to think of corrective measures that could be taken with respect to an eye towards preventing what took place that night from reoccurring?
Yeah, I have there's a few things that I think, a few changes that could be made that I think would improve
Okay.
things up there, especially on a night like that.
Now, according to Lieutenant Flynn's report, there were a number of fake IDs confiscated that night by the restaurant personnel. Is that right?
Correct.
And I believe the number was 12 or 13. Is that right?
13, I believe, yes.
Okay. And were those IDs turned over to the police department?
No.
And is it your understanding that having a false ID and attempting to gain access to an establishment using a false ID is a misdemeanor?
In that capacity, yes.
Have you made inquiry as to whether or not it would be worthwhile for the department to prosecute or pursue the makers of false IDs?
So typically what we're finding, not the majority, not all, certainly not all, because they come in many different forms, but what we're finding is that the majority of fake IDs that we're seeing over the last few years are coming from China. Kids are going on websites, paying $100, $200, whatever it is, to the website, uploading an image, and then, a week or two later, they'll receive the ID in the mail from China.
And Is the quality of the fake ID that they received of high quality or low quality?
Yeah, I'd say it's very high quality.
And so they're tough to detect?
Yeah, they definitely can be.
Are there measures that are available in order to detect the high quality fake IDs?
Yeah, so there are companies that make scanners. So if you take the license, it scans the barcode, and it'll tell you if the information is correct, if it is a legitimate ID, as best it can. I don't think it's foolproof, but it's a pretty good indicator. There are less expensive ones that aren't as good, but then there are some that are a little bit more expensive that are much better, of high quality, and yeah, I think that they can definitely come back.
Do you know whether or not the Kowloon now has that type of scanner?
I do not.
You indicated that the police department doesn't really have an interest in prosecuting the misdemeanor cases for utilizing a fake ID. Can you explain to the board the reason for that position?
I wouldn't say that we don't have an interest. I think we take it on a case-by-case basis and leave it up to the officer's discretion. A lot of times when restaurants and bars seize IDs, they don't notify us. In the case of the Kowloon, pretty much almost every night they have a police detail there, so probably there more than anywhere else we're aware when an ID gets taken. And again, like I said, it's a case-by-case type thing where, is the person, take responsibility for it, remorseful, respectful. The way we kind of look at it is they've probably paid a lot of money for that ID. We're taking that away. They've lost that money. They've lost that means to procure alcohol. And also, it's probably an end of the night for them in a lot of cases. The night's over. So, again, there's usually, for us to, in most cases, to go forward with something like that, there's usually a plus factor, some type of disturbance or something like that to go along with it.
Okay. Did you, after this incident took place, did you look at past records and make a determination as to whether there were past incidents of this type, either service to underage persons or fights or other disorders at the Kowloon?
Yes.
And what did you find in that regard?
Well, specifically, I was asked about Thanksgiving Eve. So I went back 10 years on Thanksgiving Eve looking for disturbances. And other than the one in question, I think I found 2 in the last 2 years, and they both took place in the parking lot of the restaurant. Okay. The other thing I was asked to do was look back and see how many times we had prosecuted for somebody trying to attempt to use a fake ID at the Kowloon, and I believe I was only able to find one, and I went back. I think we went back 5 years on that, okay. But we were able to locate one.
Okay. And just for the record, I would state that I received from the ABCC copies of what they call 24J reports. And these are reports of people who are either arrested or in accidents or other contact with the police, and they ask the person where their last drink was prior to the accident or the citation or whatever else. And I found 2 instances, one in 2021, one in 2022, of a 24J report involving the Kowloon. So in totality, Chief, how would you assess the record of Kowloon involved with as it concerns its policing of its own premises?
Yeah, I think, overall, when you look at the capacity of the restaurant and how busy it is, I think, overall, looking at it, I think the incidents are probably on the low side for, like I said, an establishment that big with that bit much of a capacity and the amount of patrons going in and out of there every year.
And as compared with other establishments in Saugus, past and present, is Kowloon, in your view, one of the better-run establishments?
Yeah, clearly it's, my experience the last, almost 30 years, it's obviously a family-run business. The management team they have in place is all family. So if anything goes wrong within the walls of the restaurant, they're very concerned about it. They work well with us to try to solve any issue that comes up. And they work well on their own. A lot of times they'll take a proactive approach to a lot of things.
Okay. Aside from the purchase of that high-resolution scanner that you referred to earlier, do you have any other recommendation that you would like the board to consider with respect to the incident that took place Thanksgiving Eve past?
Yeah, I would say that after speaking with the officers that were there that night, that we probably could have used a few more officers on duty, on detail at the Kowloon that night, just to spread themselves out a little bit more. The restaurant has a lot of nooks and crannies and number of entrances and exits, and I think a couple more people working that night or in the future on a night like that would certainly help.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. That's all the questioning I have, and I would turn it over to the board if board members have any questions of the Chief.
Chairman.
Thank you. Selectman Cogliano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chief, hypothetically, if an individual has 5 older brothers and uses one of those brothers' IDs, how good is the scanner going to do on that?
It's not. It's not 100%. In instances like that, it's up to whoever's carding the individuals at the door. Depending on how much those brothers look alike, it's going to be really hard to.
And they look a lot alike.
Yeah.
I just, for the record, when I was 18 years old, my older brother was 21. We looked a lot alike, and I used his ID. The scanner's not going to pick that up.
Correct.
Just the same as it is today. And there are fake IDs everywhere. I was in the bar business for 30 years. And whether you take the ID, there's no foolproof way to know who that is. And I think a scanner is great, but it's not going to help. It certainly wouldn't help in this incident because the person does have 5 older brothers, and clearly he probably used one of those.
Possibly.
So, and then the other question I had is for, if someone is to leave an establishment and they get pulled over for drunk driving or they're in an accident, how much stock do we put into the last place they say they were at? Is it investigated? If someone just says they were at the Kowloon or they were at...
Well, they're under oath. It happens in the courtroom usually when they're pleading out, and they're under oath when they give that information to the judge. So.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Selectman Cogliano. Selectman Chicalini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief, for making yourself and the officers available. I appreciate it. So, noting in the report that the individuals had the armbands, the 2 underage individuals, I agree with Selectman Cogliano's point about the use of IDs. We obviously can't prevent that, but even some of the newest technology that's out there, from what I'm hearing from friends that own bars, it's some of the latest and greatest actually can run through the scanners and still come across as they work. So
the research I've done has shown that you have to do your homework on the scanners.
Yeah.
Some work much better than others.
Right.
Certainly. Again, they're not 100%
So,
full.
and the other thing you mentioned, and you went back 10 years and you found 2 incidents in 10 years, but they were in the parking lot. I personally, as a licensing officer, a licensing board, I can't put a lot of credence on what happens in a parking lot because, for all I know, it could have been a road rage incident. They pulled off into the Kowloon because the parking lot is massive.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't connect the dots between what happens outside. It's different if a patron's walking out of the Kowloon and a fight ensues right there. But if you have something that a squabble in the parking lot, it could have been over a parking spot, which could happen in Ocean State Job Lot, or it could happen anywhere, not necessarily liquor related. So I just me personally, I don't really connect the dots with those two incidents with potentially another incident that happened inside the establishment. And I've said that same exact thing with a previous, I've only had 2 of these hearings in 10 years, but that was my comment there as well, because there was an incident in that parking lot as well. So that's just how I've always handled it. And you mentioned also about adding officers, and I do agree with that, and I'm sure the Wong family is amenable. I think the thing that would be most helpful is to kind of, instead of saying adding a few officers, if you and your team could kind of meet with the Wong family, walk through the establishment, and kind of figure out the best logistically for the number of police officers we need, I think that would make the most sense. I know that the bar on the right side is the one that really gets kind of packed. It gets a little close, a little crowded. Reading the report, it took 40 to 45 seconds for Sergeant Rappa to get over there. But we did have 2 lieutenants, 1 sergeant, and 3 officers on, 6 officers on in a night, and they were under capacity per the report. So I'd like to, rather than stating tonight if that's something we decide, I think it would be subject to a mutual agreement between you and the license holder as to how many officers should be on detail in that. That's just me as one person. I'm not speaking for the entire board, but you might say, you might say add a couple, that might mean 2, or you might say add a few, that might mean 3, but maybe your officers fill 4. I just don't know a number, and I want to be able to make sure that we got it right.
Yeah, I'm sure we can do that.
Thank you.
I want to piggyback, thank you, Selectman Ciccolini, on what was just said. So the Kowloon restaurant itself was not over capacity. However, the bar area certainly looked like, from the videos, looked like they were over capacity. Would the family be amenable to perhaps having somebody stand at the bar area to count how many people are there once it's decided what the correct capacity should be in each room? I mean, I think that was, again, from just seeing the videos, it seemed to be the issue. There were just so many people that were in one particular portion of the Kowloon, even though the Kowloon in its entirety was not over capacity.
I'm sure that can be done. I think I've seen that done in other establishments.
Thank you. Do board members have additional questions?
No, thank
No.
you, Madam Chair. I just was going to say the same thing that Selectman Ciccolini said about working with the family and the busy nights, whether it's Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve, or to come up with a number of police officers should be there and work with the Wong family.
Madam Chairman.
Selectman Sereno. Thank you, Selectman Riley.
Good evening, Chief and Ira. I happened to be on the board 20 years ago when we had a lot of problems on Route 1 with the nightclub establishments, with the Palace, the Taboo, Orchid. And I remember, Ira, you were our representative then 15 years ago. It's good to see you again. I haven't seen you in that long. I noticed in the police report, and certainly the Kowloon was never, I wouldn't put the Kowloon in that category at all. They never had problems like that, and they run a good operation up there. I'm looking at trying to do things that'll help prevent this happening again, especially on the night before Thanksgiving. I think all the bar establishments, whether it's Kowloons or even small clubs in town, that's a busy, busy night for all the liquor establishments, so I understand what happened. First of all, I believe, I think it would be helpful to get one of them scanners, ID scanners. I think they're helpful. There's a few there's cheaper ones that go around $900. There's some that'll run about $1,800. I know I was in Florida in February for 3 weeks, and every time I walked into a bar or club or something, they had it at the door. They had a handheld scanner, and they scanned everybody's licenses. It might not catch all of them, but I think it'll catch maybe some of them, 50%, and if that helps, that helps. But what also came to my mind after reading the police report was, I know you talked about adding a couple police detail. What about fire detail? 2 fire detail guys, because I know you did mention, first thing in your report was crowding and overcapacity. And it was mentioned that an off-duty fire department officer was there, and he didn't mention anything. But I don't know if the Wongs would be open to that, putting, just for Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, putting 2 fire details in there, because I think, Ira, if I'm wrong, correct me, or Chief, I think the fire department has a power to either shut the place down or say no more people in the establishment. And in your report, it did say, Officer Flynn did say that he spoke to Bobby Wong about trying to keep the front entrance and hallway clear and flowing some of the people upstairs. So I think maybe 2 fire detail people that night might be helpful also. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members?
At this point, I would invite council, if council has questions for the chief, to put them to him.
Attorney Magnin, do you have any questions for the chief?
Madam Chair,
Selectman Ciccolini.
I'd like to just a blanket statement based on what I've heard so far in the report, and I haven't changed my feelings on this matter. I feel as though, given the history of Kowloon and the diligence of the family in working for what's best for the community, I feel strongly that this incident is something that they acknowledged from day one, felt terrible about. However, I do feel as though it had nothing to do with them being laxed or not following through on what is expected of running an establishment and holding a liquor license in the town of Saugus, Massachusetts. That being said, I do not support any type of suspension of their liquor license. I don't think it should be suspended. I don't think they violated any of the laws, especially given the fact that knowing the underage persons that were involved and knowing their family situations with older brothers, etc. I definitely think we work with the police department and the Wong family, have them go forward with, if they would agree to purchasing one of the scanners, have them meet with the police department on the number of details that would be appropriate for the next time around. And then to Selectman Serino's suggestion about a couple of firefighters to monitor capacity and work through that, I would be more than satisfied, and we could put this to a close. That's just me as one of 5. Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Selectman Cogliano.
I'm right in line with Selectman Ciccolini on this. I think in the restaurant business, I think Bobby Wong is probably the most respected restaurateur in New England. Forget Saugus, Boston. They run an impeccable place. This is an isolated incident. I know Mike brought up some of the clubs that caused problems back in the 90s and 2000s, left out the Palace, where this incident happened hourly. Never mind once every 25 years. They run a fantastic operation. If we ask Bobby Wong to add details, or add fire details, or buy a scanner, he's going to do it and probably do more than we require. So I'm fine with letting the chief meet with the Wong family and decide how they're going to run the night before Thanksgiving, which is amateur night in the bar business. It's the worst night of the year, the busiest night. Everybody comes out.
And excuse me, and this year was exacerbated because another big bar was closed
correct.
down the road.
Correct, because they had problems the previous year
Right,
and the
and
night
he
before
decided to go away.
Right. So
that added to your headaches, unfortunately.
that's it, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Selectman Cogliano. Special counsel?
Yes, at this time, I'd like to ask Lieutenant Flynn to come to the podium.
It's not necessary.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Lieutenant Flynn, would you state your full name for the record, please?
Sean Michael Flynn.
And you're currently lieutenant with the Saugus Police Department, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And were you working the police detail on Thanksgiving Eve?
I was one of the 6 officers there, yes.
Okay. And during the course of that night, as a result of the incident that took place there, you conducted an investigation as to the facts and circumstances as to what happened.
Yeah, charges were brought forward by other police officers there, but I did the investigation for the board.
Okay. And you produced the report to the chief that we have provided to council dated November 30th. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And to the chair, I would like to, if the chair does not have it, I will provide a copy to be marked as an exhibit at this hearing and made part of the record.
Okay.
So, Lieutenant, as a result of your investigation, did you conclude that there were violations of the alcoholic beverages rules and regulations that night?
Yeah, after speaking to the parties that were involved, we realized that 2 of the 4 people that were involved in the altercation were, in fact, minors, or under the age of, not minors, but under the age of 21.
Yeah. And just back up a moment, can you describe briefly for the board what exactly took place and where it took place?
So the Hong Kong Lounge is the bar that we spoke of when you go in. That's on the right. It's the main bar of the Kowloon. When you enter that on the left side of the bar, we still aren't really sure how or why that started, but a fight started between 2 19-year-old men and a man and his girlfriend. Again, why that started, we don't know, but a fight broke out between those 3 men.
And was someone was hit with a bottle? Is that what
Yeah,
happened?
so an allegation was made that night that one of the 19-year-olds were struck with a bottle. He told me that right away while we were still inside the bar before we got them outside. Once we went outside, I realized that he actually was bleeding and asked him again, and he told me that he was struck with a bottle, and the 2 of them pointed out the female that actually did that.
Okay. And at the time that the altercation began, was there a detail officer inside the bar?
I was actually in that bar. I had just a few minutes earlier been told that they believed someone was coming in. One of the Kowloon staff told me they believed people were coming in through the back door of the Hong Kong Lounge. And he asked me to go up there and kind of stay up there for a little bit. I had only been there a few minutes. So I was fairly close, but I never heard anything over the radio. And I ended up being probably the 4th officer that was there.
Was it difficult to communicate over the radio because of the
yes,
noise?
And that's why so many police officers showed up. Saugus State Police showed up just because we couldn't hear dispatch calling us. So they weren't sure what was happening, so they were trying to reach us, and we couldn't hear any of that.
Okay.
So we had a large presence show up.
Is there any other way of communicating that you think could provide a better way of doing it, or is that just the
Yeah, I mean,
endemic?
from any earpieces, which we don't have, I mean, I don't see another way that, I mean, you know, you turn it up and you, depending on where you are, it's certainly in certain areas you could hear that. Where I was, I couldn't.
Okay. And where you were in relation to where the altercation took
Yes,
place?
I was in the Hong Kong bar. I was in that bar section.
Yes.
I was just behind the bar where there's tables in the back. And there's, as I said, there's a back entrance, I think more of a fire exit.
So, did you see the altercation break out, or something?
No, I didn't. I saw a lot of movement. People start filming. That's what I saw, and then I realized there was probably a fight, and made my way over to it.
Okay. Did you have difficulty making your way over to that area?
Yeah, it was crowded. It was crowded. It was, I mean, when they realized who it was pushing their way through, people cleared out for me, but it was, yeah, it's crowded in there.
Yeah. Do you know whether or not that room has a specific capacity assigned to it?
I don't believe it does. I believe the restaurant itself has the capacity number.
And so you don't know, well, if there was no capacity assigned to that particular room, there's no way for you to measure whether or not it was over capacity, right?
No, my guess was on, because I did move around throughout the night, my guess was on the entire restaurant, not on any specific room.
Okay, so after you made your way to the altercation, what did you do at that point?
So there were 3 officers actually trying to handcuff one of the individuals that was involved in the fight. I observed one gentleman with his shirt off and another one whose collar was kind of stretched out, and he was very agitated, so I could tell that he had been involved. So while the other officers handcuffed the individual, brought him outside, I held those 2 back for a little bit and I started asking them what happened. And then we just went outside and, you know, tried to figure things out from there.
Okay. Who were the other 3 officers who were there with you?
The ones that went outside with them were Sergeant Rappa, Officer Zielinski, and Officer Aldred.
Okay. And when you were outside, you got a more complete picture of what had taken place?
Exactly. We started piecing together what happened. Again, it's hard to find out how it started because you get 2 completely different stories of how each side was a victim. But
afterwards, did you subsequently look at social media images or films taken of it by people
so
there?
That wasn't until the next day. The individual in the videos that came out on social media that was shown being hit with a bottle never knew he was hit with a bottle. He didn't tell me he was hit with a bottle. I don't think he had any idea. His friend was, from what I believe, his friend had been struck with a bottle before the video started rolling. He knew he was hit with a bottle.
Do you know what kind of bottle it was? Was it a beer bottle?
It was a beer bottle, yeah.
Okay. And to your knowledge, beer is served at the premises in the bottle as opposed to pouring into a glass or a cup?
Yes.
Okay. As a result of the altercation, were charges brought against various people involved?
They were, yeah.
And are those charges still pending in court?
I believe they're all still pending. Well, I believe at least 3 of the 4 are still pending on individuals.
Ultimately, were the charges brought against the minors who were involved in the altercation or the other 2 people?
They were brought against all 4.
I'm sorry.
I believe charges were brought against all 4.
All 4.
Varying charges, but yes.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have for the lieutenant. And again, members of the board, if you wish to inquire of the lieutenant, please do so.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions?
Madam Chair,
Selectman Ciccolini?
just a comment. I appreciate the questioning that's gone through, but I don't think there's a need for us to interview, to ask the officers and stuff and go any further with it. I mean, we've already heard from the chief, we heard from the lieutenant who wrote the report. Me as one person, I mean, you know, I've heard enough unless you think it's really necessary to have the officers. Sergeant Rapper was the one who actually was in the major altercation, was on the ground. He's not here tonight, so I don't want to waste other people's time, and so I just wanted to put that out there.
Attorney Selesnik, were you planning on asking any of the other police officers to speak this evening?
I was planning on asking Officer Aldred to speak, but in light of the testimony of Lieutenant Flynn, I don't think I need to.
Okay, thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, before you go away, Lieutenant, counsel for Kowloon has the opportunity to ask you questions if they wish to do so.
No questions. Thank you. Thank you.
So I've indicated that I'm not going to proceed with the testimony of Officer Aldred because it might duplicate the testimony that's already been received. With that, I would ask the licensee if he intends to have Mr. Wong testify.
Yeah.
Okay.
There'll be no testimony.
Okay. I would like to ask Mr. Wong a couple of questions, just for clarification. So if he would go to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you could
Hi.
just give your name and address, please.
Bob Wong.
And the official manager of the Kowloon is Donald Wong, your brother?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but you're here tonight on behalf of the Kowloon restaurant?
Correct.
Okay. You heard the testimony of the lieutenant with respect to the bar location where this altercation took place. To your knowledge, is there a designated capacity for that room?
I don't know offhand. I just know for the entire restaurant, it's 1,200 people.
Yeah. And there are a number of different rooms at the restaurant, correct?
Yes.
And there's an entertainment room where there are shows from time to time?
Not inside. Well, upstairs, but there was no show that evening. So.
Is there any, aside from the overall capacity of the entire restaurant, is there no breakdown of the upstairs or the bar or anything else?
Well, there may be, but I don't recall.
Okay. Are there any procedures in place at the restaurant to make determinations that when particular areas get crowded, that there might be a difficulty with capacity limits?
Yes, definitely. Like it said in the report, we always want to keep the aisles clear, and as long as the aisles are clear, it's usually fine in terms of wait staff getting by as well as customers getting by. So that's really the benchmark on how we kind of like monitor the flow of the customer base.
Okay. In terms of the sound system, is there a separate sound system in the bar and the other areas of the restaurant?
Well, the bar and one of the other dining rooms is connected, and then the rest of the dining rooms in another sound system.
Okay. Is there a way for a bartender, if the bartender sees an altercation, either developing or having developed, is there a way for the bartender to cut the sound?
Yes, but he'd have to get outside the bar, so it's right around right just outside the entrance of the bar.
Okay. In terms of distance, how far from behind the bar to get to
From
that?
behind the bar, maybe 20 feet, perhaps, 10, 20 feet.
Okay. So it's not something that the bartender would have any difficulty doing?
No.
Okay. And is it a button or a switch or something that it?
It's just something you can turn, like a turning thing. So.
Like a volume button?
Right, exactly.
Okay. And the police report makes reference to it. When you check IDs on that night in particular, you handed out wristbands for the people to wear who have been checked.
I'm sorry?
The people who you check
Right.
and are 21 or older,
Right.
you put a wristband on to tell the bartenders that you do.
Correct.
They've
Correct.
been checked.
Yes.
It's not the practice of any of the staff to make additional checks once that armband goes on?
Yeah, inside the dining area, sometimes when they sit down, we'll just say, even though they have one of the wristbands, you can always double check if you think somebody may have taken it off and try to give it to somebody else, that type of thing. But on the most part, if they have a wristband, we know they've already been checked, their ID's been checked, and that's the only way you can get a wristband.
Okay, and the police report indicated that there were 13 fake IDs confiscated that night. Is that an unusually high number for a night?
Well, compared to any other night of the year, yes, it's on the higher side.
Okay. And how frequent is it that fake IDs are confiscated?
We might get 1 or 2 a month, and we do offer a $50 reward for the wait staff for every fake ID they confiscate. So there's a big incentive for the waiter or waitress and the bartender to check IDs, because they know if they catch one, they get a $50 reward.
Has there ever been a circumstance where you're aware of where a staff person confiscated what they thought was a fake ID and it turned out to be a genuine ID?
Well, what they don't confiscate if it's a real ID. What they'll do is come up to a manager or even the policeman on detail. If they have a question, we'll look at it, and if it's we find out it's real, we return it back. So we don't confiscate something that is unless we know that it's going to be a fake ID. That's when we confiscate them.
Okay. Those are all the questions that I had for Mr. Wong. If the board has any questions, this would be an appropriate time to do that.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions this evening?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
I'll let Selectman Riley.
Selectman Riley.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned the $50 incentive for your employees, because that's even beyond what you need to do to be able to catch someone that's trying to drink that's underage. This was a very, it was a bad situation that got worse, but I just want to let you know, going through the report, knowing what you do ahead of time, what you plan to do moving forward. We appreciate how you've always run that business, and, when you have people drinking in a close place, and I'm not even sure if these people actually knew each other, but that we all grew up, we all went to bars, and we all, got into situations where we've seen this in clubs, and, but I just want to let you know that knowing what you do, you go beyond, as far as I'm concerned, of trying to find illegal licenses. So,
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Selectman Riley. Selectman Ciccallini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the other thing that shouldn't be overlooked is the fact that we had 2 of-age drinkers in the altercation and 2 underage, and the most criminal act by hitting somebody with a bottle was done by the people that were over the drinking age. So, you know, and the fact that they didn't retaliate after the fact, the underage drinkers. So I understand it's definitely an issue, but, you know, sometimes the most out-of-control people can be the more senior people in an altercation. It's not always directed at the youth. So I do think that the wristbands are helpful. One thing I did note, I know you knew you had Heineken wristbands, the green ones. You may want to consider putting like a date or a Kowloon logo on them, so that Heineken wristbands are pretty easy to come by on the market, just to make sure that there's something
Yep.
that identifies your
Sure.
specific night. That might be helpful for that busy night. But I agree with Selectman Riley's comments that, you know, we know you're going to do whatever you think is in the best interest and agree to whatever's the chief and fire department recommends. That's never been an issue. You know, everybody on this board knows your family's name and legacy is more important to you than anything. And so I have all confidence in the world that you'll be able to do everything in your power to try to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Selectman Ciccolini. Would anybody else like to address? And thank you for coming
you.
this evening. There were a few things that were mentioned as perhaps would alleviate the situation moving forward. One was mentioned a fire detail. 2 was mentioned additional police officers the night on Thanksgiving Eve. 1 was the ID scanner that somebody mentioned, and perhaps coming up with capacity in some of your rooms, specifically the Hong Kong room, and maybe having somebody there and making sure there's not too many people that are in that room, specifically on Thanksgiving Eve, which seems to be the issue at hand. Are those things that you would be willing to move forward with?
Of course, we've always loved to work together with the town, with the police department, fire department. We respect everything you guys do, and I know it's not easy, so, you know, anything you recommend, we'll be more than happy to implement.
Thank you very much. We
Madam Chair.
appreciate that. Selectman Ciccolini.
Would you like me to make that in a form of a motion, a recommendation, or how would you want to
Well,
proceed?
let's just,
I think unless there's something additional that counsel for the licensee would like to say, you could close the hearing at this time and then entertain a
okay.
motion.
Would Attorney Magnin, would your attorneys, Mr. Wong, like to say anything before we close the hearing? I thought you were going to distribute those. No, I'm kidding. All right, so
We never thought we would need it for a hearing, but,
Right.
you know, there's always a first time for everything. So we kept 1 box just in case, so you can see what we do. So,
and we appreciate that.
No.
Would you like to say anything before we close the hearing? Okay, with that said, Selectman Ciccolini. Oh,
Madam-
any board members want to say anything? Selectman Ciccolini,
Madam
please.
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we close the hearing.
And that's seconded by the chair. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Selectman Ciccolini's motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Selectman Ciccolini.
So, Madam Chair, in relation to the incident at Kowloon for Thanksgiving Eve, November 22nd, 2023, I offer the following in the form of a motion in discussions with the police chief, the report by our lieutenant who was on scene. I would recommend that the Kowloon work directly with the police department to determine the appropriate number of details to be on scene that evening. Also concur with the fire chief to determine if the suggested 2 fire personnel on staff would be the appropriate number. I'll go with whatever the chief determines is adequate. They'll also purchase and acquire and use a professional scanner for scanning IDs on a going forward basis to make sure that they can do everything they can in their power going forward for that. And there was...
The capacity in the Hong Kong room.
So I would believe that you'd probably work also with the inspectional services and the fire department to determine capacity on a room-by-room basis. So I do think that that's something that you can determine after you speak with the chief, the fire chief, and also determine with the inspectional services. But I think those were the key items that we brought up for this, and I'll make that in the form of a motion to be implemented as soon as possible, but obviously no later than next Thanksgiving Eve, or
And
this
that is-
coming.
Thank you. And that is seconded by the chair. Is there further discussion? I'd like to do a roll call vote on this, please. Selectman Cogliano?
Yes.
Selectman Riley?
Yes.
Selectman Sereno?
Yes.
Selectman Ciccolini?
Yes.
And Selectman Panetta? Yes. Motion carries 5-0. So we have one more vote to take this evening, and that vote is to have our special counsel, Ira Zalesnik, to put together findings and conclusions of the hearing.
So moved, Madam Chair.
And that's seconded by the chair. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Selectman Ciccolini's motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank you, Mr. Wong, and your attorneys for coming out this evening. Thank you to our police chief and the police staff, our lieutenant. Thank you very much. It was very important to be here this evening.
Right.
And of course, to you, Special Counsel Zalesnik, we appreciate you coming this evening. Is there anything else you want to say before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
No, I will hand this to you so that you can keep it with the records of the
Okay,
board.
thank you very much. And I just heard a motion to adjourn from Selectman Cogliano, seconded by the chair. All those in favor of Selectman Cogliano's motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Hope everybody
Thank
has
you.
a wonderful
Good night,
evening.
everybody.
Good night.